Bert Salazar. This is episode number 8 of the Bert Salazar Retirement Show, and this is the only retirement show on Facebook Live. I had some oral surgery last week, so I have a little plate underneath my mouth, so I'm learning how to speak all over again, but I'm doing okay. So if I mumble a little bit, don't worry about it. It's going to get better. But once again, I'm excited to be here. I'm hoping that all of you had a wonderful and safe Memorial Day weekend. As I was saying, South Florida was a rainy weekend. It happens every single Memorial Day. So, but we still had a good time. Just stay at home and watch a lot of movies. Continue to write my book that should be done now in the next couple of weeks. But it was good. It was good. So today's episode is going to be an interesting one because it's titled, what do you do a year away from retirement? And the reason why I wanted to bring this up to you, I wrote a bunch of notes because one of my really good clients called me yesterday. He's about a year away from retirement. And I've been handling a lot of his retirement accounts, obviously, so I know exactly what's going on in his financial life. But he wanted to have a discussion regarding some of the personal things in his financial life that him and I had not gotten around to talk about, although I had mentioned a lot of these things over the past 12 years that we've been working together. So let's say in your case, you have decided to pull the trigger, you have decided to retire. So now what? What do you do next? Because this is going to be a new world for you. You're going from people at work to assets at work. So your entire world is going to change. You have to not only mentally, but also psychologically make a paradigm shift in the way that you think about your assets, how you think about your retirement, how you think about your retirement life, that you think about the distribution planning of all of those retirement assets that you have worked so hard for many, many years. And obviously, you also have your family. Many of you are married, so you've been married for a long time. So now you're starting a brand new path in a new world of retirement, and that's easier said than done. Usually what I tell a lot of my clients as they start to approach retirement is that it's not so much what you're retiring from, but it's most important what you're retiring to. And if you're married, you need to have a conversation. You need to have what I call a CTJ retirement meeting. A CTJ is a come to Jesus retiring meeting or retirement meeting with your partner in life. Because at the end of the day, I've seen it a number of times where the husband wants one thing and the wife wants something else, and the two shall never meet. So that's where you start getting a lot of issues and things start to kind of break down, and they don't go as well as it should. So retirement is preparation. You must prepare for retirement from a business standpoint and also from a personal perspective. You also need to start doing some calculations on your retirement distribution assets. What is the rate of return and the distribution rate of return, which is even more important, of your retirement assets once you hit that retirement age. Now, most of the clients that I have engaged in the past, and I have close to 300 clients now, have never done any of this planning, so I had to do everything for them because all they were thinking about was the accumulation of assets and not the distribution of assets, which is so prevalent in retirement. So also, what distribution rates are you comfortable with? Traditionally, and depending on what publication you read, they'll say that you should not distribute more than 3 to 4% of your retirement assets. Because if you start taking distributions in excess of that 4% floor, then you're going to have a much greater susceptibility to running out of money before you run out of life. Actually, because of interest rates and stock market volatility, I recommend to most of my clients, unless you've done proper tactical retirement blueprint planning, not to take any more than 3% of their retirement assets on any given year. That means that $1 million portfolio can only generate approximately $30,000 worth of retirement income prior to taxes and fees and expenses and so forth. So you got to be very careful. If you want to go north of that, you are at your own peril. Now, if you've done some tactical retirement distribution planning and you have created or put together a self-created pension plan using guaranteed annuities, then you can go up to 6, 7, or 8% distribution, and you're never going to run out of money before you run out of life. But you have to do that planning prior to retirement, because once you get to retirement, it's going to be a lot more challenging for you from that perspective. The other question is, will you fully retire or continue to work on a part-time basis, or will you start a new business? If you're going to fully retire, that means that you're going to be 100% dependent on the value of your assets and the distribution rate of your assets. But if you're going to work on a part-time basis, and also you're going to maybe start a new business that you've been wanting to do for some time, then obviously you can offset some of those distribution rates and be able to do a little bit better. But it all depends. It all depends on what it is that you want for yourself in your life in retirement. And I'll go back to my CTJ, my Come to Jesus retirement meeting with your partner in life. It is so critical, important to do so, that it is the number one thing that I recommend to each and every one of my clients when they come to see me. Usually, I deal with a lot of families, so the husband and wife come to see me, or maybe even partners in life come to see me. The first question that I ask is, have you guys had a CTJ retirement plan meeting? And they'll go, well, what's your definition of CTJ? What do you mean by CTJ? And I say, well, come to Jesus. And, they kind of get it and they laugh about it. But I would argue 99% of the time they haven't done that. And you got to be very careful, because, you both want to enjoy the same things, and you both want to be at the same wavelength, because otherwise retirement is not going to happen the way that you intended to. And it's going to be sad if you have to hear that at the 11th hour, instead of kind of planning for it, over the previous 5 to 10 years prior to retirement. So it's important that you have that meeting. So the question is, well, you get to your date when you decide that you're going to pull the trigger on retirement, and the big question is, well, what do you do now? How do you start to mold that retirement plan for you and your family, and how it is that you get it implemented, and most important, executed from a business perspective. So first of all, I think it's important that you need to prepare and to apply for Medicare benefits. And it's very, very important, because there's a 7-month window in which you must apply for Medicare. Now, you can apply after that, but if you do, you may end up having to pay penalties for the rest of your life, so it doesn't make sense. So you have a 7-month window in which to apply. That means the month of your birthday, okay, and then 3 months before that, and then 3 months after that. So that's a 7-month window in which you can apply for Medicare benefits. I would encourage each and every one of you that when you get to that first trimester before your birth date, so in my case, I was born in July, so that means I can go to April, May, and June, and then July. So April 1st, I'm going to be eligible to apply for Medicare benefits. Now, you can apply online, or you can actually go to a Medicare or Social Security office and apply there in person as well. But you need to do that, because you need to put together a lot of the paperwork that they're going to require, your birth certificate, your passport, Social Security numbers, all kinds of information they're going to be asking from you. And you can actually do that online. Makes it a lot easier. And then if you have any questions, you can either contact them online or go visit an office in your regional and local area and be able to get your questions answered at that point in time. Obviously, what is one of the things that you also got to consider is most important. Once you apply for Medicare, now you know it's going to be an 80-20 rule. So Medicare is going to pay for about 80% of your Medicare expenses, and then obviously the other 20% you're going to have to pay for it yourself. Now, Medicare, you got Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. Medicare Part A you don't pay for, that's hospitalization, so you don't pay for that. You do pay a Medicare premium for Part B, and you do pay a Medicare premium for Part D, which is prescription drugs. Now, the Medicare premium that you pay is all dependent on your distribution rate of assets and the taxable reportable income that you report to the IRS on an annual basis. So it's important that if you can create a tax-free retirement life, then obviously that, or get as close to it as you possibly can, then you're not going to have the fear that your Medicare premium will actually go up in retirement. So it's all based on, what your provisional income calculation will be that will take care of Social Security and Medicare from a premium standpoint and a taxable standpoint along those lines. So from that perspective, it's important that you note. Now, the other thing that you need to figure out prior to retirement, and the longer you can prepare for this, the better off you're going to be. But if you're a year away from retirement, I would encourage each and every one of you to understand what your FRA date is. Your FRA, your full retirement age would be. So if you were born prior to 1937, your full retirement age will be age 65. If you're born between 1943 and 1954, then your full retirement age is 66. Now, in my case, I was born in 1956. So for me, my full retirement age will be 66 years of age and 4 months. And every year after 1966, you add 2 months. So if you were born, let's say not after 1954, you would add 2 months. So if you were born in 1955, it would be age 66 and 2 months. If you were born like myself in 1956, it would be 66 and 4 months. If you were born in 1957, it would be 66 and 6 months, up to 10 months. And then you go, once you get to age, if you were born after 1960 or after, then your full retirement age would be it would be age 67. So just remember, prior to 1937, your full retirement age is 65. From 1943 to 1954, your full retirement age is age 66. And then 1960 and older will be age 67. It's important to note that, because once you reach your full retirement age, it doesn't matter how much income you continue to generate in retirement. There's not going to be any Social Security penalty along those lines. If you're not at full retirement age, then you may be penalized by Social Security. So for every $3 that you earn, they will take $1. They'll give it back to you later on, but obviously they will penalize you because you're taking Social Security benefits and you're continuing to work and you're earning above the annual earnings test or threshold on an annual basis. So be very careful with that. Now, part of the work that I do is not only is to figure out what your Medicare premium is as part of a tactical retirement blueprint, but also to figure out what is your Social Security benefits, how do they work for you, what would be the best time for you to pull the trigger on those benefits, and what would be your FRA and any penalty that you may pay depending on how much income you're going to be earning after you turn the Social Security benefits on at some point in time in the future. Now, Consider also your Social Security benefits and your Social Security timing. Now, the longer you wait to start pulling your Social Security benefits, the higher that benefit is going to be. And the reason for that is simple. The older you get, the less time that you have left in that financial rope, or that life rope, as a good friend of mine calls it. But therefore, you'll get more. But obviously, you got to figure out what is a break-even point from a business perspective. For instance, if you wait from age 66 until age 70 to start taking your Social Security benefits, you get a credit. You get an 8% of credit per year for every year. So over a 4-year period from 66 to 70 would be a 32%, actually would be, 32% increase in credit and then payout to you. If your retirement is at 67, then it would be a 24% because it will only be 3 years. So be careful of that. Now, the choice of when do you retire, it really depends on your individual circumstances. Now, many clients will say to me, Bert, then shouldn't I wait till age 70? And my answer would be, well, it depends. Let's figure it out. Let's do the math. Let's do the calculations, because that means that, let's say that you need $70,000 of income in retirement in order to maintain your standard of living. If you're 66 years of age and you decide to wait to retirement until age 70, that means that those $70,000 have to come from somewhere else. Because if you were taking Social Security benefits when you're 66, you could take those Social Security benefits and offset those benefits with what you would have taken out of your retirement accounts, thus giving you the ability to grow those retirement accounts faster and longer, because you don't need as much money from your retirement accounts in order to maintain your standard of living, because of the fact that you are receiving Social Security benefits. So if you have plenty of money, you have plenty of assets, retirement assets, and you can afford to wait to pull those Social Security benefits, and it may be a good idea for you to wait. The other thing to consider is, has your spouse worked in the past? And how long did he or she work? Because upon your death, your surviving spouse is going to have the ability to pull the bigger of the two Social Security benefits. So if yours is going to be the bigger benefit in retirement, then it might make sense for you to wait longer. So that way, when you die, your surviving spouse will step into your shoes and pull the bigger benefit at some point in time in the future. So that's important to note as well. Now, if your retirement assets are very susceptible to stock market volatility, and all of a sudden your assets drop by 30% in one given year, and now you have to take that $70,000 because you cannot cut your living expenses by 30%, then that means you're going to start to take more assets out of a depreciating, or more money out of a depreciating asset, and that may cause your retirement assets to be spent sooner than you wanted to, and then you may run out of money before you run out of life, and that would be a whole different issue altogether from a retirement standpoint. So when I do all those calculations, and don't thank me because none of you have ever done any of these calculations, then we determine what would be the optimum time for you to start taking Social Security benefits. Because for some of you, it might make sense for you to start pulling them as soon as you're eligible. For others, you might as well wait. The other issue is, what is the longevity in your life? What would it be the probabilities of longevity in your life? How long do you think you're going to live? Are you in good shape? Do you exercise? Are you a smoker? Are you a non-smoker? Have you had any medical conditions that may shorten your life in retirement? How about your parents? How old did they live to? How long did they live? How about your siblings? Are they still alive? So longevity planning and mortality planning is very critical in determining how it is are you going to take your Social Security benefits in retirement from a from a financial standpoint along those lines. What about, I know one of the areas that many of my clients did not know until they kind of visited with me was spousal benefits. You know, you can actually obtain spousal benefits. So if your spouse retired and you've been married to that spouse for a number of years, and you can actually have access to a percentage of that spousal benefit. Now, it's not going to damage at all the spouse that retires. So let's say that the husband retired, is already collecting benefits, and now you have a younger spouse or a similar age spouse that may want to delay his or her benefit to some point in time in the future, but we want to start drawing some benefit, then he or she can opt in for a spousal benefit. If you do it at age 62, I'm not going to give you all the numbers, you'll get about 32.5% of the benefit that retiree or that spouse that's already retired is generating. If you wait till age 67, it would be 50%, and 50% is the most that you can get. But it depends. For some of you, taking your own benefits may be more suitable than the spousal benefit. For others, it may be the spousal benefit altogether. So that's very important for you to consider. And again, you have to be able to speak and have a conversation with a retirement strategist before you start going in that direction. You also need to be able to manage your expenses aggressively. And what I mean by that is you must be able to either reduce or eliminate them altogether. You know, make sure that you can live within your means. And then if you have a buffer above that, then that would be icing on the cake, and that would become play money as opposed to a paycheck along those lines. Choose the proper retirement accounts for distribution purposes. Not only where those accounts are situated, but what kind of rate of return you can get on those accounts, but also what kind of guaranteed distribution rate can you obtain from those accounts, and how many of those accounts are guaranteed. I can tell you that the more guarantees you have in retirement, the better off you're going to be, not only for yourself, but also for your family as well. So I recommend that you load up on all the guaranteed accounts as you possibly can, because your retirement life is going to be much better, it's going to be much more successful, and you're going to be a lot happier in retirement than if you don't have any type of guaranteed paycheck or any type of guaranteed cash flow, which is important to do. Some of the people and some of the clients that I engage have guaranteed pensions because they worked in the public sector. Some of you may have a private pension. So you got to figure out what percentage of your retirement assets are going to be on a guaranteed basis and what percentage are not. I would take your age from 100, and that should be the amount of assets that you should have guaranteed. So if you're 70 years of age, 70% of your assets should be guaranteed. If you're 65, it should be 65%. So whatever is most suitable for you. But at the end of the day, you have to make certain that you have an annuity portfolio in place that will provide guarantees. So you have an annuity portfolio within a retirement portfolio, because you're not going to have all of the assets into an annuity portfolio. So you need to have a little bit more diversification, but that's something that I can help you all at some point in time in the future. Guaranteed versus non-guaranteed, that goes without saying. I have never had a retiree that tells me, Bert, I have way too much money coming into me from guaranteed sources, and I don't like that at all. Each and every one of my clients will tell me if I can get more guaranteed benefits, I would take them any day of the week along those lines. Now, the other issue is, well, how about taxed versus non-taxed retirement benefits? And I can tell you that if you can get guaranteed retirement income and guaranteed paychecks in retirement, along with tax-free retirement, then you're going to be in the stratosphere of retirement, because you're going to be at a different level altogether than anyone that you know. So it's not only important to have guaranteed paychecks in retirement, it's also extremely important to make certain that those retirement paychecks are on a tax-free basis coming to you. Remember, you have the 3 tax buckets. You have the taxable, the tax deferred, and the tax-free bucket. But most of the clients that I engage for the first time, the vast majority of their assets are either in the taxable or the tax deferred bucket, and they don't have as much assets in the most important bucket, which is a tax-free bucket of retirement. But once I do a tactical retirement blueprint, then we start to divide those assets accordingly, so we have the proper balance between taxable, tax deferred, and tax-free from that perspective as well. Also, you got to figure out the impact of stock market losses on your retirement success. And you got to figure out what is your financial exposure. So if the market dropped by 50% tomorrow, as it has done in the past on several occasions, then what kind of financial exposures are going to have for yourself and your family? Always remember that the average bear market is about 39%, and it usually lasts about a year and a half, and it takes about 5 to 6 years to recover. And most of the time, bear markets occur every 5 to 5.5 years. So obviously, we have the longest bull market in American history that just ended not too long ago. But that was an anomaly because it was the first time in U.S. history that had happened. So making certain that you understand the impact of stock market volatility on your retirement assets is very, very important from a business point of view. If you want to make certain that you can maximize and be efficient and be effective in your retirement distribution planning. Also, take a look at your provisional income calculations. I know you don't know what I'm talking about, but the provisional income calculations is going to determine what percentage of your Social Security benefits are going to be taxed in retirement. By the way, the vast majority of the financial advisors that you deal with on an ongoing basis do not know what provisional calculations are, and they don't even know how to put them together. That's something that, because of the fact I'm a tax planner, this is something that I do for my clients every single year. So the provisional calculation will determine all of the income that will come into play in determining what percentage of your Social Security benefits will be taxed in retirement. In a perfect world, you would want 0% of your Social Security benefits to be taxed in retirement. In the not so perfect world, 50% of your Social Security benefits will be taxed. And in a horrible world, 85% of your Social Security benefits will be taxed in retirement. What is the impact of the taxation of your Social Security benefits? Well, it simply means that if your Social Security benefits are going to be taxed at either 50% or 85%, that means you have to find a way to plug that hole, because now you're getting less money in. So that means you're going to have to go into your retirement accounts, and you're going to have to invade more principal and interest out of those retirement accounts in order to offset the taxation of your Social Security benefits. So if you can avoid the taxation of those benefits altogether, then you don't need to dip into those retirement accounts any more than you need to in order to maintain your standard of living. In another video, which I have already done, but I'll share another one with you and go through it again, I'll walk you through what is taken into consideration to determine the provisional income calculation for you and your family in retirement. The other issue to consider a year away from retirement, or as soon as you possibly can, is, are you and your family protected from the fatal four in retirement? What if you have a premature death? What is the impact of that on your family and their well-being? What if you live a long life and the susceptibility and the risk of running out of money before you run out of life? Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared to become a Walmart greeter in your mid-80s because you ran out of money and the only thing you have left is, mere Social Security benefits that may be coming into you and your spouse? How do you deal with those things? How about if you have the risk of a disability and all of a sudden you have long-term care? By the way, if you're a husband and wife age 65, there's a 70% probability that one of you is going to have a need for long-term care in the future anyways. By the way, that's the highest probability, only second to the probability of death, which is always 100%. So if all of a sudden either you or your survivor or your spouse has a need for long-term care, and that additional cost has to be paid by your family because Medicare is not going to cover that, where's the money going to come from? Are you going to have to go into those retirement assets and be more aggressive and take more out in order to offset those expenses? Who's going to provide the care? How's the care going to be done? Where's the care going to be given? So those are things that are so critically important that at least a year, and I'm being facetious when I say this, a year from retirement, if you don't have these answers, I would argue that you should postpone retirement until you have the platform and the roadmap, or have a tactical retirement blueprint put together for you and your family that will answer all of those questions without any questions to go unanswered at that point in time. And then last but not least is the risk of eroding factors. Taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, interest rate volatility, propensity to consume, lawsuits. I have a client of mine that retired 2 years ago, ran a red light, it was his fault, hurt 2 other people in another vehicle, and now he's in litigation, and he's spent close to $100,000 in legal fees. And so those are things that are very critical for you to understand prior to making a commitment to pulling the trigger on your retirement life. Another final thought for all of you is, do you have your wills and trust in place? Remember, no one ever dies at the right time. So you need to have your wills and you need to have your trust. I'll do another video on the importance of having wills and trust in retirement and having healthcare proxy and durable powers of attorney in place, because at some point in time, you may not be able to make either a medical or financial decision on your behalf, and you need someone else to be making those decisions for you. So those are things that are very critical for you to consider, at least, in the very least, 1 year before you retire. I also appreciate that because this is the only retirement video that we do, and the Bert Salazar Retirement Show is the only one on Facebook Live. I would appreciate if you can comment, if you can share, if you can hit like, because at the end of the day, I'm here to provide you with information, but most important, education, because although there's more information in the marketplace than ever before, Americans are worse off than they've ever been. And the reason for that is that information without education always leads to failure. So as I always say to all of you when I do either a video or a podcast or an educational webinar, my goal for each and every one of you is to kind of help you change in the way that you see things, because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see start to change. So once again, thanks very much for giving me a little bit of your time today. I hope all of you enjoy yourselves. I hope all of you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend and that you're staying safe. I know South Florida is opening now, so we're getting back to business. So I'll talk to you again next Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye.